Hey everyone, Illuminator Greg here. Today we have a fantastic discussion with Raijinku, also known as Mark Wooden. In this video, we'll talk about Kaijudo, the previous game from Lorcana's main designers Ryan Miller and Steve Warner, which includes mentions of some of the most broken cards designed and or favorited by these two individuals, proving once and for all that these guys are human.
I thought they were mythical game design wizards.
Not only that, but we have a super exciting story about how Mark managed to score a trip and go to Wizards of the Coast headquarters to meet the design team for Kaijudo, which again includes the likes of Ryan Miller and Steve Warner. And finally, for those hungry for more discussion about Lorcana itself, we have a special portion in the last third where we exclusively talk about the most recent product announcement with some hot takes sprinkled in for good measure. Before we get into all of that though, I just want to mention there is minor stuttering and a cut in the first 6 minutes due to some internet troubles I had at the beginning of the discussion. Don't worry though, as it sorts itself out for the entire rest of the video. I promise. Of course, as most podcast style videos go, feel free to alt-tab this video while you do something else, and remember to watch this in sessions or with YouTube's speed-up feature if this video's length feels daunting. Please also check out Mark's social media links in the description, including Twitter, YouTube, and Metafy Coaching. Alright, let's get into it. Hope you enjoy. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Traverse Tavern. I'm Illuminator Greg, and I'm here with a very special guest. We have Mark Wooden, also known as Raijinku Online. He's a card game player and previously topped a plethora amount of times throughout his card gaming career, including a second place finish at Kaijudo's last Winter Championship. Mark, welcome to the Traverse Tavern. How are you doing today?
Doing all right. Thanks for having me on today.
Of course. Thank you for being on. So we have a lot to cover today. We sent him a quick request to talk about a game that many of you have probably not heard about for the better half of a decade, which is Kaijudo. This is the previous game created by some designers of Lorcana. Ryan Miller was the lead designer for Kaijudo as well. And then also lead designer of Lorcana, Steve Warner, was also in the R&D team. And so we're going to just have some general discussion about Kaijudo and also some inferences from this past experience that we can try to apply to Lorcana's forthcoming release. So to get started, I'd imagine that many people have questions about what even is a Kaijudo. So what is Kaijudo, and could you try to paint a broad picture about what your experience was like when playing this game?
Yeah, well, a Kaijudo, as you call it there. If anybody knows or has ever played the game Duel Masters, it was like a reboot of Duel Masters. For those of you who don't know what Duel Masters is, it's a lot of people would call it Magic like light. So it's basically, you have all the same concepts of like mana, and obviously for like Lorcana, we're assuming the ink is going to maybe be similar to that. But in Magic, you have mana in order to play your cards. Like for example, let's jump into talking about like Maleficent, for example. It has 9 in the corner. If you base this off of a Kaijudo or Duel Masters or Magic standpoint, it's saying that it's going to cost 9 to play, right? So, Duel Masters was around. Then it ended up not doing so hot over here. It's still going, it's still thriving in Japan, as most, card games seem to do over there. Uh, but after that, there was I'm sure it was 6 years between Duel Masters and Kaijudo approximately. Then they brought back, Kaijudo and kind of started from there. They started with a really small kind of like intro decks and then like this one set. So it started out really small, but essentially the game works like I said. The mana system is very similar to Magic, and probably one of the better things about it is that in the game you don't have any mana screw, you don't have any mana flooding, things like that. You basically you don't get to mulligan or anything like that, but whatever your hand is, you can use any single one of those cards as a resource. So that was always, definitely one of the pros of this. You could get like a whole hand. You're like, oh, I can't play any of these cards. So you're just throwing your mana. So typically speaking, you don't get that card back. As the game progressed, there were ways to get cards back from the mana pool. Uh, things like that. But essentially, you had that, you played your creatures, and basically your goal was to defeat your opponent. And in order to do that, you had to basically attack them. They had these things called shields. So they start out 5 shields on the board. Um, when you attack one of those shields, one of two things happen. One, they either add the card to their hand, so they get a resource, or two, if there's a shield blast mechanic, or in Duel Masters, it was a trigger. But anyways, if there's a shield blast mechanic, you can play the card for free. So I know that sounds kind of ridiculous, but in some of these cards, they were like really overpowered. Certain ones would be like uh, Terra Pit, for example. Um, there basically it would destroy, or in the terms of Kaijudo, banish, uh, a card. So I believe that's the same term that we have in Lorcana. Banish,
I
yes,
believe it
no.
is banished. Yes.
So with that, it's like, okay, well, that similarity there. Um, but anyway, so you could basically, and I messed around with the deck just for fun and did some things like build an entire deck of Shield Blasts. I don't typically recommend it, but if somebody were to attack you, every one of your cards that they hit is going to trigger an effect. Now, as the game went on, the Shield Blasts, they actually created Shield Blast creatures. So that means not only do they get an effect, but they also get to be played on board. And that can definitely turn the tides of battle in your favor. Um, so again, the goal is you break all their shields, and then once you've done that, you go in for one more swing, and as long as that swing isn't blocked, and then of course, other factors are involved too. There, like as time went on, they had cards that you could basically use to get back shields. So basically, even if you were losing, you could play a card, and then you're back in the game again. Ironically, Steve Warner, he was the person that created one of probably the most broken cards in Kaijudo. The card was called Andromeda of the Citadel.
Yep.
It's like a nine cost dragon. This thing, like you played this guy on the board, and you get 2 shields back.
Yeah, I think you basically hit the nail on the head when it comes to a basic overview of Kaijudo. And also, I love the mana system. I feel like this is just what everyone talks about when it comes to the game, but just the idea that you can commit a card, and that's like a real, strategical decision in that game. Like, which card am I really going to throw away? Because in Kaijudo in particular, some of those games last for quite a long time. Like, you can play 9, 10 cost cards in that game and get away with it, which is another
Yeah.
interesting aspect of it. But you also mentioned Andromeda of the Citadel, which is a really funny card. I didn't know that was, Warner's creation, but it's definitely really
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
Timmy Power Gamers, for those that play Archetype, would really love Andromeda. But it turns out that the card's just good for spikes as well. You can have competitive use for Andromeda as well. So, of course, the big thing when I was doing some research in for this video, taking a look at all your topping deck profiles, there seems to be one thing that's pretty common throughout all of them, and that is the inclusion of a particular Darkness Civilization card, Queen Kalima. So, can you kind of
Yeah.
walk us through Queen Kalima, what she does, and why you decided to use her in a lot of your decks throughout your competitive run
Oh
with
yeah.
Kaijudo?
Yeah. So Queen Kalima, okay, so basically around probably midway through like the life of the game, they came out with these monarchs, and they did these really fun, sort of like card reveals, and Ryan Miller was a big part of that. So if you guys haven't seen them, seriously, just type in like, well, go to like Wizards Kaijudo. They still have a YouTube channel, and they still have like all of his card reveals. He really gets into it. He's a funny guy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but so they came out with these monarchs, and these monarchs were supposed to be sort of like the pinnacle of power here. Like they were the absolutely like the strongest characters in each civilization. And again, the civilizations, there was like there's the different colors. So there was like fire, water, um, earth, or it was like a tree. I don't. Wow, it's been a while. It's nature people.
Nature, I
Wow.
think, yeah.
Nature, the tree. Yes. Um. Anyways, and then there's of course there's like the darkness and then light as well. And again, they equip the corresponding colors. So, it really did kind of fit into that. Anyways, so Queen Kalima was the leader of the Darkness civilization. So basically, you have this giant body. It costs 10 to play, so you really need to invest into playing it. Um, and it had like 16,000 power, which again is really big. Like, oh yeah, yeah, no big deal. So 16,000 power. It gives like all of your other Darkness Civilization cards like plus 4,000. And when it attacks, you basically get to, take a card back, a creature back, basically, from your discard pile back to your hand. But the big thing about it is it's on playability. So you play this card, you basically flip over the top three cards of your deck, and trust me, there was so much, there's so many times where it was so suspenseful here because you're like, oh, you never know, you never know. But you flip over the top three cards. For every one that is a Darkness Civilization card, your opponent has to sacrifice one of their creatures. So, depending on how you build your deck, consistency, etc.,
Hmm.
it can be really good or it can be really bad.
This is a great
So,
segue to see how you choose to build a deck, which is just fit as many darkness cards in your deck as possible to kind of
yes,
nail Kalima near 100% of
yes,
the time in all three checks.
yeah. It got to the point basically if I play Kalima, it's like like board wipe. Let me just get rid of all that for you.
Hmm.
And the thing is, at that point in the game, it's like, okay, well, I've just sort of established my presence and my board state. And let's say they're like, okay, let me try to follow up against that. Let me try to do this. And then, like you drop another Kalima. You so you can run multiple copies of these cards, and
Hmm.
there's no like legendary restriction like you would see in like Magic for a period of time. Um, but yeah, so the one of the key points, I mean, obviously it comes down to deck building, but one of the things that happened that actually inspired me to run Queen Kalima, uh, there was a KMC, which stands for Kaijudo Masters Championship or Challenge. I'm sorry, Challenge. Um, and essentially, there was one of the top players. Some of you may know Billy Brake. Well, it's his brother, Bobby Brake. Um, anyway, so he was involved in the game. A great player, great guy, super nice. And he basically he ran this deck, and I watched him play it. It was ridiculous. And I can show you a picture of this thing later. But basically, he had these cards called Eternal Haven, which is the Light Civilization Monarch. Now, this card basically says, hey, it was like 15,500 power or something like that. Again, I apologize. It's been years, guys.
Totally
But anyway,
good.
so it was a blocker, so it could basically defend and all this other stuff. When you play it, you get to draw a card and you can play a blocker from your hand. It doesn't matter how much it costs, or well, was it nine or less? Anyways, you'll probably see the image of it. But anyway, so you play the card, you get to draw and then play a blocker. So yeah, I think it was nine or less because it would be kind of ridiculous. You could just play another Haven.
Yeah.
Like, you'll just keep this endless loop going.
Yeah, why
Okay.
not?
So, anyways, you play this card, and then that happens every time you play it, as well as when you attack. So you're gonna get a bunch of blockers out. The thing that made it really difficult to deal with was the fact that it had protection. It was like untargetable, type of thing. So like if I were to play a card like I mentioned earlier, that Terror Pit, I couldn't choose that card because it's protected. And that makes for some uncomfortable game states.
Yeah.
So basically, Bobby basically had all of these havens on board. Like literally, he had like three havens and then like two other big blockers. It was just
It's like,
ridiculous.
how do I win against this? Like, what? Like, you sitting on the other
Exactly.
end of the table is like, what am I supposed to really do? Right.
Yeah. Oh, and I guess I forgot to mention this too. So, obviously you said you start with five shields. Um, so basically what happens is different creatures can break or basically deal damage equal to probably where they are on their power level. So a normal one just breaks one. some are double breakers. Well, all the monarchs were triple breakers. So not only that, so essentially all that, Bobby had to do was establish, a couple cards on board and then, swing in and guess what? They can't target your last, card that's going to attack. So you just win the game. So after seeing him use that strategy, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, man, like how do you beat that? And it kind of came to my mind. I'm like, okay, the only card I can think of is Queen Kalima, and I'm like, I'm gonna make this work. Nobody at that time had made a successful deck that I'm aware of. It wasn't like, nobody had posted anything, nothing was, pre-made or, nothing in the metagame was known. So I went about it. I'm like, okay, let's try this out. And I think my first successful Kalima deck was like this darkness nature lights sort of like combination mixture of this. And the cool thing is like of this is um I basically would be able to play certain cards that would allow me to cheat out other cards. And there's another card called Serpens, the Spirit Shifter. It's kind of like a mini Andromeda. Basically, anytime one of your guys dies, uh, you get a shield. So, um,
Time to sacrifice a lot of guys then, right?
yeah. And that's the thing too. Like the deck ran cards is like, okay, let me play this guy on the usually turn five. It's called like Ripper Reaper. Okay, you play that, you get to sacrifice one of your guys, and then they sacrifice one of their guys, and
So
then
you
if you
break
have the
even on
serpents
that.
out, you get a shield too.
It's like a Rube
And
Goldberg machine of like eventually you start getting something out of it. It's like,
yes,
okay, we're
yes.
we're
And
going we're trading here, but I also get a shield. That's fun.
right. So it's like, the idea is sort of like this attrition-based strategy over time, but the deck would recycle things. So there's a card called Necros where it was a purple green card. You would play this, you get to choose any creature in your discard pile, add it to your hand, and then you can play something that costs five or less for free. So, then you could play that Ripper Reaper. And if you really wanted to, you could sacrifice that Necros that you just played and just like, hey, you know. I don't know. It was just a lot of synergies. It was really nice when you went up against like aggro decks or, like they're trying to uh, you know, do these kind of plays where they just keep coming at you, keep coming at you. And uh if you can establish something on your board, you can make it work. So in the deck, that was my biggest concern. I was like, okay, well, how do I survive? Because there's so much rush, so many decks trying to be aggressive. So
It's
I
like
just
you
put
need to
in
play
all
a
these
10
like
cost
chump
eventually.
blockers.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to get there, right?
Mhm.
So I put all these chump blockers that were basically like, okay, it's like, oh, this is a 4,000 power blocker or 4,500 power blocker. It dies when it wins a battle, but it's a 4 to 4,500 attack power blocker, so it's huge. And then I didn't feel bad when I blocked because if I had the serpents out, I gained a shield.
Mhm.
So, and this went both ways. So, for example, they had just swung in with a bunch of things, and I'm like, you know what? I can't like I can't come back from this. I have to find some other way. So some of these guys they could attack too. So I would just swing into their guy, and then my guy, after winning that battle, would die and just get a shield. So I would and I would make bad plays, per se. Like,
Mhm.
oh man, I have to survive. So let me swing my littler guy into his bigger guy just so I can get another shield. Let me keep this game going. Let me sacrifice my board so that I can get more shields and keep in this game.
Mhm.
And it really helped. And I don't know, it was a really good time. And that was the first time that this deck really made an impact here.
Mhm.
And
And
then from
seems like
there it just
there's
kind of skyrocketed.
yeah. So when I looked into kind of the variations of Queen Kalima, there's a whole bunch of listed. I've used the Kaijudo channel as a resource to just see every single Kalima deck that you've ever done. The one that kind of intrigues me the most is kind of this interesting design space opened up with the light darkness version of the deck that you made. Because you have one Andromeda or a couple Andromedas at the top end of the curve, And it's like, okay, well, how do I justify, Queen Kalima's effect if I need to use light civilization cards to be able to play this Andromeda? But there are multi civilization cards, right? So you have
Yeah.
quite a few multi civilization cards that still count as darkness, as far as I know, and still count
Yes.
for Kalima's effect, right? And so like
Hmm.
that isn't like super mind blowing design space or anything, but it's always like super interesting to see if you can kind of sneak your way into a splash. Like Andromeda of the Citadels probably shouldn't belong, in a Kalima deck because it helps you stabilize to get to that Kalima. But it's like little fun tricks in deck building like that I always find really satisfying when I come across them in card games. So definitely love
Yeah.
all the Kalima versions.
Yeah, there was a lot of interesting choices in techs. There was a championship event I flew down to Texas, and it was the I think it was the one of the winter championships, and essentially I was in like I was in like second place by the end of it, and unfortunately I played against like one of the definitely well-known players of the day, Carl Machoto. He was big into dual masters as well. But anyway, so he was running a very tempo based deck, and I I had some really bad breaks,
Mm-hmm.
and I ended up losing that game, and it pushed me to ninth place. I was like, no.
That's what they call bubbling
Um,
in card games.
yeah, yeah. So that was rough, but
Mm,
it would have been really cool because again, like I really enjoyed that version of the deck. It like it was like it turbo discarded towards the beginning, and then it just refreshed everything with a card called Reverberate. And basically, what that card does is for every one of your shields, you draw a card, but it costs six to play. So you spend basically the first few turns discarding the heck out of your opponent's hand so they don't have any resources, and then you refill on yours, and then hey, look, the game's live.
mhm.
Now there was one unfortunate time at one of these events I was playing, and I typically I try to keep it to as much mono darkness as possible. And I was playing against somebody. I was like, okay, trying to figure out the calculations here. I'm like, okay, I should be good to flip over these cards. And there's another card called and I guess it's a little ironic here. It's called Mark of Kalima. It's like they knew I was going to play it or something.
Yeah, at some point, in
Um,
some way.
Yeah, yeah. But there was this card, it's called Mark of Klima. It does one of two things. One, you can either it costs eight to play. So you play it and you can either put a Klima into play, or from your hand. Or you can flip over the top two cards of your deck and your opponent has to sacrifice that many creatures. So I did the math, and at the time in my deck, I think I had four total mono civ or like not darkness cards, and there was only like two left in the whole deck, and I flipped them. I'm like, come on, come on. But yeah, I mean, it really does come down to I mean, consistency was a big part of it. I mean, I love the card, and for me as a player, if I really like a deck or I really like a concept, it becomes more about that. And I'm like, look, I want to make this work. This is my sort of signature deck. And I'm gonna make it adapt to the meta. I'm gonna find ways to, make it win. If it's struggling, what can I do? Like it's not like I'm just gonna jump ship to another deck. I'm like, no, I'm gonna figure out what works for this.
Mhm. Yeah, so with the Queen Kalima stuff, especially since it was basically an untested concept, you kind of you push the design space of the game to actually make something wholly fresh. So I guess this next one is kind of an interesting play style type of question. But when it comes to Lorcana, are you interested in exploring some more of those untested ideas and seeing if you can make something about the cards that are previously deemed to be not meta relevant or staples, etc.?
100%.
It's fun.
That's something that I always do. Any card game I play, I'm not the person that's gonna do the meta decks. I don't net deck. I look at the decks and I see what people use, but like like I play a lot of different games, and I played Digimon and One Piece, and uh, back in the day, Yu-Gi-Oh and Dragon Ball Super and all these other things. But um, I see so many people. They're like, oh yeah, I'm just like I'm using this person's list. I'm using this person's list, and I'm like, I mean that's cool. That's cool for you. I'm not hating on that, but I'm like, for me, it's about I don't know, it's sort of figuring things out on my own, and uh, I don't know, just like I feel like it's a part of the experience, like okay, well, yeah, I can, get somebody else to do it for me, but for me, I'm like, oh, where's the fun in that? And I
Mhm.
want to sort of like see these things, discover these things, and maybe somebody missed something,
Mhm.
so 100%. I'm gonna find a I mean I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm really really hoping that they make some like really cool like Jafar or like I'm a big villain person when it comes to card games. So, Queen Kalima is like the Darkness Monarch, when I played in Magic, I was using like, Orzhov colors, which is, like, black and yellow or black and white, sorry.
Like, it seems like Hades
Um
is starting the villain, tribal archetype in Lorcana. We'll
mhm.
see what comes out of that. But
Yeah, yeah. But the thing is, I mean, like I said, I really want to use these cards, but it also really depends on, how they design them, how they
mhm.
make them. If they're like, oh yeah, this Aladdin deck is just super aggro, it's not gonna be for me. I love control decks. I love taking my time. I like, destroying cards, discarding cards, getting cards back from the discard pile, the graveyard, that kind of thing. So if they do something like that, like as of right now, I mean, from all the cards I've seen, I'm definitely, closer to fitting into the whole Maleficent, sort of, area there, just because it has ways to, get rid of cards. So, but yeah, so I will definitely be using some very unique decks, like, like if you see me, you just be ready, there's going to be a weird deck or,
Yeah, I can just
something like
imagine
that.
it now. Like, I get paired up to you against, in some major tournament, and it's like, all right, what is Mark on? I have no clue. Let's, let's see how this goes. Because I guess that's also one, good reason to kind of bring in and I guess what would can be considered an untested pick to the rest of the metagame. Something that is new is like always that surprise factor where the opponent is like, I don't know how to play against whatever my opponent is bringing to the table. That's another.
You're seriously like I've had people literally, like talk to me at events or like, like for whatever reason there's like, I always get nervous playing you. It's like I don't know. They're like it's like you do these weird things or like, you play these cards, I don't even know what you're doing. Uh and I mean it's a great time, so I'm excited, for Lorcana and I want to see what they have, available and I don't know, it's like exciting times.
Perfect. Of course, as part one half of a YouTube channel for the game, I'm also super excited to see where Lorcana is going to go. Speaking of Lorcana, I know that you had a super special opportunity to talk with members of Wizards R&D around during the time that Quest for the Gauntlet was getting developed for Kaijudo. Can you kind of give us, the story about what that experience was like and what you did while at Wizards?
Yeah, yeah. So, just a little bit of a backstory to it. So, I had basically started, what was it? So, when I had gone to that trip, and I went down to Texas for that championship, they gave out like these awards, for to certain people, and I don't know. There's multiple reasons they did it. Maybe it was because people traveled, or so on and so forth. But they gave out like three, I think, awards to people, the equivalent of like basically Spirit Award type of things.
Mm.
And they said, we're giving these to you. It was me, Vu, and Rob Haybear, and then Vu Win. Um, but anyway, so we had gotten these really cool like images. It was of Almighty Colossus, and all of R&D from Wizards of the Coast had signed him. So I have that. It's in a frame and everything like that, and so it's pretty sweet. And then they also, I mean, as a little extra little side thing, they gave us like an iPad. I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, I'm
It's
not
like,
gonna
why not?
complain there. Yeah, it's like I ended in ninth place that day, but it's like I still won. So, uh, but so and another part of this too is they said like you guys are positive members and sort of like these pillars in the community. So I was talking the other day there with Jared Hymus from the Citizens of Lorcana, and was kind of talking about this stuff too. And I was just like, him, you yourself, and like all these other content creators out there, like you guys have an opportunity here. I'm not gonna say that 100% that's gonna happen, but they're gonna be keeping their eyes out. They're always watching. Um, so afterwards, it was probably about, I don't know, in my mind, it was like, maybe like a month later or something. I had gotten a message from, at the time, Andrea Cole. She was kind of like the sort of like the Cassie Warner of Lorcana at the time. Anyway, so she was like involved in like kind of, communicating with players and all this other stuff. And they're basically like, hey, we wanted to talk to you, can we set up a meeting? So I did a call, and they basically told me like, "Hey, so we are planning on seeing if you guys are interested in coming out to Wizards of the Coast headquarters." I'm like,
Of
yeah.
course, yeah.
I'm like, what? I mean, I don't know why, but yeah, sure, okay. So yeah, I was super excited about this, and they apparently, some of the other guys that they had chosen, there was a total of four people. Some of the other guys they had chosen, weren't able to take the call at that time. So I'm over here with this information first. I can't say anything about it. And I'm just like, oh, come on, guys, go get on this call, talk to them. They're like, oh, they'll be on tomorrow. Ugh, okay. Stuff out with my work schedule. And, I'm planning on going out there. And, actually, sort of ironic. This actually happened right around this time frame, about like a week ago, and then was it 9 years ago? I don't even know. It's some ridiculous amount of time. I actually think it was close to that, but anywho, so we ended up full all expense paid trip to fly out to Washington, Wizards of the Coast headquarters there. So we didn't have to worry about our flights, and they're pretty nice flights, you know. They took care of our hotels for us. They chauffeured us around. They took care of our meals, all this stuff. So like just that was really cool because a lot of people don't get that opportunity, just in general. But then when we got to like headquarters, and I know some people right now with things going on with Wizards, whatever. But like I will say this, it was magical. It really was because like I'm not even kidding you. Like you got in the elevator to go up to their floor, and it was like going into another world because you they had like this music playing and lights were like glowing. At least that's how I remember it in my head. Uh, like seriously, like you got on the elevator, it was like okay, this is cool. But and of course, as soon as you got out of the elevator, big giant dragons chilling there waiting. So obviously I'm doing some photo ops, picture type things, um, and like looking around. They've got like all these different trophies and games and everything everywhere, and it was very surreal. And we got to walk around, sort of like I'm forgetting like the term for it, but they had like this very specific term for their sort of like office space, and they had all the cubicles and all this information that would probably not be good if it leaked, type of thing.
Mhm.
At the time I didn't play Magic, but like there's people with like all these design like like plans and everything just laid out for Magic.
It's like
I'm like,
Wizards gave
oh,
me the
that's
opportunity to
interesting.
just like see the inside baseball,
Yeah,
yeah, all throughout.
yeah. Yeah, seriously. And then they had like random like like cardboard stand-ins of like, different Kaijudo characters and things like that. It was really cool. But like when it got to be like the really really great experience part of it was we essentially did a R&D session with them, and we got up right in the morning. Well, before we did the R&D, we got in, we like went over these numbers, and they're talking about the game and like the numbers and like how much they're making, or more or less that kind of stuff. And then we got to sit around this big round table in this big office space, and essentially uh, they're like, yeah, okay, let's do some. What wasn't actually no, we. I'm trying to remember if this was no, we didn't do drafting. I think they just gave us like stacks of cards or something like that. It,
Gotcha.
anyways, so we had these cards, and the funny thing is, all these cards they gave us had like these stickers, and they were just like a white sticker with all the information of what the card is.
The test
So and
cards. Yeah.
yeah, test cards. But I had like a little bit of a cringe moment there because one of the cards that I had it was basically a Queen Kalima, and they just put this giant sticker over. I'm like, it's a common or something. Come on,
I mean, hey, when you're
like
in
dagger.
control of printing the cards, I guess they're all, worth the same, right?
Yeah, yeah. But I'm over here. I'm like, come on, don't do this to my
Do you think that was a
don't do this to my
specific,
boy.
was that a specific target for you?
It could have been. I mean, I'm sure. Again, they seriously like I sort of joke about it, but be aware what you're doing there, like, or the things you're posting, things you're saying, replying to, because again, they are watching.
Hmm.
Like these people, it was cool, but it was also sort of creepy. Like they knew me and I've never met them before,
Hmm.
I remember really, really funny guy, Matt Tabak. He's talking about this kind of stuff. He's like, oh yeah, and it's like, no, I know you, and like he knew my sense of humor and all this other stuff. I'm just like,
I'm sure you're feeling
um,
some of that throughout this interview as I go through, all the Kalima decks and other info, when it
yeah,
comes to
yeah.
research. Unfortunately, that's
I,
just kind of the
I'm
nature of the information age, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Well, anyway, so we went through and we got to test these cards, and the cool thing is, so this was you said for Quest for the Gauntlet, and at the time prior to this, we were still in our old formats, things like that. With this, they changed everything. So they basically were like, hey, you know what? We've been doing 12 card boosters like Lorcan is planning on doing. I mean, they didn't say that. You know,
10 years in advance, they had the blueprints for
we already
Lorcana. We
know.
just not got to get this Disney license. We're ready to fire it off.
Don't let
Uh,
Hasbro know this. So, anyways, they're like they went from the 12 card packs and they opted to 15 because they wanted to basically get this in. They wanted to do rotation. They wanted to do drafting. They wanted to do this whole other format called Booster Brawl and all this other stuff. Because one of the issues, and this is something that's I think important for anybody playing Lorcana, one of the issues we ran into is that 12 cards really wasn't the best for drafting. So if Lorcana set up this way, it's gonna. I honestly feel like it's gonna be a little bit difficult, or you're gonna have to invest in getting an additional pack, which can be more costly.
yeah.
Again, you can do it if you have the money for it. That's fine. But like, you're trying to get new players into the game, it might be, a little bit,
Just to
pay
clarify
gap.
real quick, I do believe the pre-draft booster packs for Kaijudo were 9 cards per pack. So that
9 cards.
definitely is an issue for draft.
Was
Actually,
it was it 9 cards?
let me fact check that real quick. Because I know, basically, when looking into it, like you would need to have like six, like essentially 6 packs or so, maybe like 5 to draft. Because draft was kind of like a supported format, but like the booster packs weren't like express intent to be done for draft. So I think some people try to map. Let's see. Duel Masters.
Oh, you're right. You're right. 9 cards.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well then that was probably the thing. Okay, so
It's interesting
I
to talk
I
about
slightly
maybe 12 cards being possible for Lorcana draft, but that's a conversation for later,
okay,
maybe.
okay. Yeah, no, okay, so that it may be a possibility. I'm just so sad. Yeah, so my apologies there.
No worries.
But yeah, so either way, so it was 9 cards. It was very difficult to start drafting with 9 card packs. Yeah, I've done it, but anyways. So, yeah, so I do think it would still be a little bit harder with 12 cards. But I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see.
Especially if
But
you're locked
anywho,
into 2 inks per deck for sure. Because what are you supposed to do if you get
right,
past cards that aren't in your color? Is the color restriction not a
right.
thing in draft? There's a lot of logistical things that could potentially get in the way of a draftable Lorcana. But that being said, I really hope
Mhm.
they find a way to make it work because draft is a great
Yeah, no,
format.
I would I would definitely be, on board with that. The thing is like just figuring out, again, once we know what the resource system is, is it something that again they gave us like the information of a 60 card deck. Does it have to be cards in the deck, or
That's the
I
big
don't know. It's
question
also
for
interesting to
everyone
know.
right now, yeah.
Yeah,
Especially
right.
because,
Seriously.
Kaijudo players are like, wait, I thought, Kaijudo mana system was made to, get away from some of the issues made with Magic. So I'm interested to
Yeah.
see how that shakes up. But
Yeah, I honestly believe, and I know this is a little bit of a side note tangent thing, but honestly believe if they're using 60 card decks, um, that they are going to incorporate the deck itself into the resource system, so that you'll end up having or be playing with about 50 cards, by the end of it.
mhm,
So whether that means taking 10 random cards from your deck, putting them face down, and you know, there's a lot of theories out there right now. So,
mhm.
but
All I know is that
um,
60 cards without any mana, because, like, on average, Magic decks in the 60 card constructed format is less than around 40 cards. So for a deck to be 60 cards with all playable cards, that seems like untested design space for any card game thus far.
yeah. Um, yeah, because what is I don't know if you know this or not. Like, what's the deck requirement for Pokemon?
I think it's 60 cards. I'm not sure if it's exact or minimum deck size, but yeah, 60 cards
Yeah,
with
I think
energies.
I think that's right there. But anyway, so jumping back though a little bit to like the whole experience with like the draft, not the drafting, but like the R&D stuff. So we got to see these cards that were basically going to be released, months and months and months in advance,
Hmm.
and that in itself was really cool because, I mean, you know, we're seeing on top of this too, we're seeing like the original design names for these things.
Hmm.
I honestly believe I could see them doing that with this game as well. But it's a little bit different because, obviously you have, the Disney names already, as opposed to Kaijudo, it's like, okay, well, what can we call this creature? There's like
And they used some really funny
one,
ones, like Scaradorable was the name of one of
yeah,
them. Yeah.
I Scare Adorable of Gloom Hollow. I have a playmat of that. I have so many cards of it and stuff like that. It's
Mhm.
was my background for a long time too. Um, but yeah, so they I don't know, they had a bunch of those things, but there was one specifically, like in the original set, it was called like Giga Stand, and basically you would attack with it and you would discard a card from your opponent's hand. Well, they're like, oh, hey, let's make a bigger version of this in this version of this set, and we'll call it Giga Sit for right now. Like, okay, I get it. So, yeah, so like you kind of got to see the design process, and there was a few cards that they showed us that I'm pretty sure changed their effects slightly. So it was interesting too, because like here in my mind, I'm like, oh, this card's coming out, it's gonna do this. And then they brought it out, I'm like, wait a minute.
This is not what I
Like obvious
remember.
yeah, they're like, oh yeah, well, let's test this out first. Let's make sure that it's actually,
So
decent or
that's
good before we
really interesting. So, part of me thinks that this exact reason is why, the card reveal side of Lorcana has been a rather slow rollout because I think R&D really wants as much time as possible to, look over these cards, make sure they're finely tuned, balanced, and all that stuff. Um,
yeah. One of the things that we talked about while we were in the R&D thing was they basically came up with this thing. It was called the Future League.
Hmm.
And essentially what they would do is they'd like, okay, we're going to take these decks, take these cards, and we're going to build them and figure out what's going to be the best deck, and also try to future proof it. Like, okay, well, like, and they continue because they had to keep adding cards from new sets or trying new strategies, all this other stuff. Um, and you know, I don't know, it was just really interesting that they came up with these ideas, and I think it'll also be interesting to see what the Lorcana players do, with because again, they have to test this stuff well in advance. They've had this stuff for about 3 years now. They've been working on the game, to my knowledge. Um, so like they definitely have taken the time to go through here. I'm sure they've already finished the second set. They're starting, if not already planning on doing the work for the third set.
Hmm.
And that's just how the process goes. Like they have to be basically at least half a year to, I'd probably say at least 9 months ahead of the schedule,
And it's always
because
such
otherwise,
a it's always such a tricky balancing act too, because when you think about it, three designers putting in 1,000 hours and 1,000 players putting in 3 hours, that's the same amount of testing time, right? So it's really interesting, kind of the just introspecting, looking at kind of where the TCG model works really well and where sometimes it falls short, where a lot of times the designers are trying to have to circumnavigate around so many possibilities, and also the prepared onslaught of all these players coming out of the woodwork and actually just play testing the game for a bit. So
mhm,
of course the utmost
yeah.
respect for the people in R&D that are having to balance this game before everyone else gets their hands on trying to break the game, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's funny. There was one card that was really problematic in the game that everyone was griping and complaining about. It was called Bottle of Wishes.
Hmm.
And basically it was a shield blast spell card type of thing. And I mean, it costs 5. So if you play it, you basically shuffle your deck and you play a card off the top of your deck. And sometimes it's super uneventful, but depending on how you design the deck or depending on your luck, you can
It
play
just
an
wins the
Andromeda.
game, yeah. It's like, hey, look,
you
five
know
cost, I won the game, right?
Yeah, yeah. It was literally for the rush and aggro players, it was a crippling card because they would be attacking and they have like these small little dudes, and they bottle wishes into a Eternal Haven. Now they've got a 15,500 blocker that put out another blocker.
Hmm.
You know,
It's
uh,
so funny because
it
looking at the R&D stuff, Bottle of Wishes was Ryan Miller's favorite card, but then jokingly, and later in the R&D panel, when he was asked what his favorite card after it got limited in standard and just limited to one copy in the Eternal Open format, he was like, well, my favorite card was Bottle of Wishes, but it seems like you
yeah.
guys had something different to say about it, which, Miller always has, spot on humor. I always find him super
Oh
funny.
yeah. He's like I said, he's a great guy. He went through and like one of the cool things about like him is he'll go through. He's like signing cards and stuff for us. And I have a bottle of wishes. I'll have to show you maybe at some point. But I have a bottle of wishes where he just wrote banned all across it, and
I would
you
love
know
to see that. Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
and then like at one point somebody else's cards he wrote like bottle of fishes and put like hooks and things on it. Um and there was another problematic card that really it didn't get played, but like it was a card called Spellbane Dragon, and basically if you play a spell it'd like break a shield or something. And he did some other designs on stuff, but anyways, yeah, he there was a whole thing where like he's like it's like what you guys don't like variants? Um, and yeah, it was one of the videos or one of the reveals he did. He basically has these people about like designing a card, and he's like treating them like he's like a drill instructor in this video, and he just goes on to say this. And there's another guy, he's a DJ, Tom Rogers. He came up with this like mix of like him saying these things and put it into some kind of techno-y mix or whatnot. But anyways, I don't know. His humor is always great, and
Mhm.
um, I don't know, just all of the team was really, really, really awesome. Um, I think the surprising thing about like the whole R&D experience was I expected there to be a bigger team, you know.
Ooh, yeah.
Um, I get there and it's like, like 6 people,
It's like these are the people responsible for this entire trading card game with
I'm
multiple
like,
releases every year. Yeah.
wait, hold on a second, wait. Like, and and if they come into the office, they're like, oh, you're going, basically, you want to play a game? Like, oh, okay. It's like, oh yeah, we
That's
should probably
awesome.
test this. Okay, and so I mean that was cool, and I got to play against some of the different people, and they made a big deal about like, oh, this person never loses, and then I beat them, and I was like, ah ha ha. No, it was cool, they were great sports, and they gave us tons of information. They even gave us the opportunity to like, okay, like before you leave, pick any card that's out there, and we'll give you basically a print of this card. So I obviously picked a Queen Kalima, got it all, like framed and everything like that. And there's one other guy, Dave Pendergrass. He picked like the memeiest card, and he's like, oh yeah, I get a Hydrobot Crab. For those of you who don't know, it's like a 5 cost, like 4,000 power vanilla. So it's like not doing anything. Nobody's running this card, but it was funny
Was it
regardless.
good looking? Was it a good art card?
I
Just one of
mean,
them. Just
I
one of
don't think
them.
so, but I don't know. But anyway, so they got to, we got to choose stuff like that, and like I said, we got to play cards all weekend. We got to see things and kind of understand like what the reveal schedule was going to look like. You know, it really was. It was like probably like one of the top experiences that I've had. And I always get so excited and giddy to talk about it with other people because I'm like, oh man, like
Mhm.
um especially people start like I see like, oh, they're playing like D&D or like they're playing Magic. I'm like, I was at their headquarters. I'm like, I'm like, I'm like,
It's it's like that meme format with the guy at the back. I don't know if you've ever seen this meme format, but it's a guy at the back of a party, and it's like a thought bubble that says they don't know that, and then you put in the exchangeable thing. So the Mark Wooden meme for that would be they don't know I tested Kaijudo revival of the
yeah.
Duel Masters franchise at Wizards of the Coast HQ. You know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, people that do the memes, make it happen.
It might be in this video. Just check back later, and then you'll see it. So I guess just to kind of, I'm sure that we could talk about this whole R&D
Sure.
experience for hours, and I of course would love to, but unfortunately we're trying to keep the video somewhat condensed.
It's all good.
Out of everything, would there be like one takeaway, or to use the Lorcana term, is there like a glimmer of inspiration or just kind of some knowledge that you found from talking with Wizards R&D?
Well, definitely nice play on the glimmer talk there.
Thank you. I worked
So
very hard on that one.
like there's your thought bubble. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I definitely think that they have to, and I think Ryan Miller talked about it in the video you probably watched or that you kind of reviewed. But they talk about, like what it takes to design these cards. And it's like, okay, well, obviously you want the flavor to be there, for that civilization or for Lorcana, what the ink represents, and I again, as of right now, we only know with the information we have. I don't think there's any set clear pattern. Like, oh, Sapphire. Okay, well, it draws a card on the Robin Hood and evasion or evasive. Like, okay.
Like half
Um,
evasive.
yeah.
What are they going
And
for?
then like red's all over the place. It's like I'm like, okay, yeah, Mickey's got the evasive, and then you got, big giant dragon that kills things, and then I mean, if destruction is in red, then okay, maybe that's a theme we can expect to see. But it's kind of understanding that whether we realize it now or not, there is a pattern. There is something here. It's just we have to be willing to look for it. And I mean, I've talked with other people. I've made sort of predictions or claims about certain things based on my information from being involved with like R&D, or even myself as sort of like an R&D type of person, because I've been working on like doing my own card games and all that stuff. But I kind of look at this, I'm like, okay, well, I said they're probably going to release something right before Christmas, as a spoiler. And then I said, hey, they'll have something Friday the 13th, and it happened. And I was telling some people, I'm like, look, we're going to get to the point where they're going to start releasing a spoiler every week. So I would be getting pretty comfortable knowing that there are going to be spoilers coming in at least once a week. Probably, I'm hopeful they're going to see one tomorrow. Or if you're watching this, Friday
January 20th.
of yes,
Yeah.
yes, January 20th.
I think that's a pretty
Um,
good bet going forward because, as we know, the Disney Laconic kind of has confirmed that they're done with proofing the first chapter set. So at that
yeah,
point, these are already sent off to the printers ostensibly, and so
sure,
at this point, they're free
sure.
to start, revealing the cards
Right,
as they deem
right.
appropriate. Yeah.
No, another thing, speaking of like card design, one of the things that Wizards of the Coast did is at some of their like national level championships a couple different times they're like, hey, let's bring people in and let's get them to design a card. So they actually did this, and in the one set, the Five Mystics, they split people into two groups, and they basically had them come up with a card for Rusalka, another one for this black feather card. They're like, okay, what do you want to see in this card? Like, what kind of just initially calls out to you? Like, okay, well, like power level, cost, effect. And they had everybody sort of like work together to get an idea of what it's like to be in research and development there. Um, and that was cool. And then once I had went there for, I think it was a summer championship, they did the same thing again with us, but we got to choose between, it was a light and a darkness card. And they gave us just some basic information to like, hey, these are, obviously there were monarchs. These are sort of like the generals of the civilization. So they're like, okay, going off of that, think about what it means to be a general. Okay, so you try to like, okay, well, a general leads their army, so they boost power, they do things to protect and assist, and they lead. So that was kind of cool. I came up with some different ideas for things, and we talked with R&D. They gave us their perspective as if like exactly what they would go through. They're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh no, maybe we need to try this a little bit different. Let's go back to the drawing board on this idea. Let's you know
Mm-hmm.
let's circle back on that. So that was really cool. It was definitely some time consuming thing though.
Mm-hmm. I love the
Thankfully they had food
way.
for us.
That's awesome. Get a paid trip and food, everything taken care of for you guys. That's awesome. The way that Miller described it in the panel that I watched, I love his way of approaching it. Is that like it seems kind of counterintuitive as for at first to have like the word leader or general to help you describe the foundation for what a trading card would do, but that was really a good word to help you figure it out, right? Because not only does a general boost your army, but also protects or maybe leads some type of command for the
Sure.
army. So it's like just from that one word you can draw so many gameplay based ideas to kind of draw off of. And so that's just great game design knowledge in general for those of you out there who are looking to design your own game, just to not even discount the exercises that don't even seem related to your game at first glance.
Yeah, you definitely want to have flavor,
Mm-hmm.
and there's one thing Kaijudo definitely had was flavor.
Mm-hmm.
And I posted some things in the Discord. Uh, you know, uh, they have this whole like sort of like tribal thing of these wild veggies.
Oh
So
yes.
if you haven't if you haven't seen these, please go check them out on Kaijudo channel. But they have the exact same sort of like flavor text that you would expect, as for example, if you've seen the brave little tailor Mickey,
Mm-hmm.
that is the type of puns and like
Yeah.
you would expect in this. Um, and it was perfect. But yeah, they have all these different things. Like there's a Full Metal Lemon, so it's like a bionic lemon. There's was it a Kernel Corn? I mean, come on. And then the thing is, and this is one thing that I've seen transferred to Lorcana, like 100%. There's no absolutely no change, no difference in this. Um, the flavor text in terms of abilities. So for example, in Kaijudo, one of the cards for the Colonel Corn, I think was his ability was like Shock or something, or I don't even know. But like, it's fits that. And then you
Hmm.
look at some of these cards in Lorcana, and okay, maybe I'm trying to think of some off the top of my head, but like okay, so Cruella de Vil is like, okay, well, you'll be sorry. Okay. Obviously, that is not going to be like a static ability for every card or things like that. They're going to change that. It could literally be the same effect on another card. It'll say a different word, you
Hmm.
know.
And that's
But
definitely
they did
very
the
helpful
exact same.
for, utilizing the Disney property in that way. Definitely is a great way to, keep people invested in the product. Families have been a great big target audience for this game. So I think overall that's a great move, despite sometimes muddying the waters for, discussion from a competitive standpoint. But hey, I mean, if it promotes the general health of the product, I'm also all for something like that.
Yeah, and I mean, even just coming at it from like that Kaijudo standpoint, and as a competitive player in the game, it didn't deter me from playing the game.
Hmm.
If anything, like I said, it made it a little bit more fun. Just to be like, okay, yeah, there's these funny effects, or if you've ever played, I don't know if you have any experience with Hearthstone,
I have. Yep.
um, but if you ever go through and like look at all the cards and their flavor text,
They're all dad
because they
jokes.
have the artist, every single one,
It's a
every single
dad
one, and I
joke.
love it.
My favorite one is for Forked Lightning. It's like a completely unplayable shaman card because it overloads you by two, but it's like, why wasn't there a spoon lightning or something like, just like really silly. It's like this, makes no sense. I shouldn't be smiling and laughing at this card, but
Yeah,
I mean, hey, they got me,
yeah.
you know?
And that's, I think that's, one of the approaches that they're going to take with this game too. Because again, keep in mind, I mean, specifically Ryan Miller. I mean, again, he's super funny,
Mhm.
but he actually was involved in his own comedy troupe. So like
Oh, really?
like when we had, yeah, 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 we had gone out to Washington one of these times, and he was actually doing like putting on a show with him and some of his buddies. So yeah, he's like a improv comedian. So
That's awesome. I'm glad that he can transfer some of
so
his talents in that area to card gaming culture as well. It's awesome to see.
yeah. That's-
That's awesome. All right, so I figured we'd take this time. We spent a lot of this episode discussion talking about Kaijudo, and we talked about Lorcana a bit, but I figured that we just go over to Lorcana for a bit just to kind of ask your opinions because you've been super active on the social medias. Put in your opinion from time to time, but recently we had basically the biggest reveal ever for Lorcana, talking about the entire product lineup thus far. How are you
yeah.
feeling about those reveals, or just anything else that's been revealed for Lorcana thus far?
Yeah. So, one interesting thing, I mean, I noticed this here more so recently. First of all, I'm excited about it. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of, fun things, and it gives us more information, more insight into, what's to come, as well as so much more speculation.
It seems like
But
every single thing they show us, there's just more questions, and they're not getting answered just yet.
yeah,
They have a
yeah,
really
no,
good
seriously,
command on
it's
the
just
marketing here.
when I think I'm starting to figure it out, it's like, oh,
60
like
card
I guess
decks?
not.
What?
Um, Yeah. So, one thing that was interesting that I noticed here, and I didn't put two and two together here till literally like right before we started meeting today. Um, if you look at the original like D23 promos, and then you compare them to like the new video that has all the same cards,
Hmm.
they did a slight design change in the cards themselves.
Hmm.
So basically, where the on the right hand side, where people call them pips, or I've been calling them lore. Um, like those little icons that look like the ink heads or the arrowheads or whatever. Um, well, that section, there's like a little like downward black arrow that sort of separates those little symbols from the rest of the card now. I mean, so the black symbol's there, but then you actually see a clear distinction in like a transition of color.
It's like
So it
highlighted
is
almost
very,
on
very
that
clear.
side.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it is very clear there. So I'm like, okay, so they did make a change, which, I don't know. And then like the whole thing with like the symbols on the bottom, again, I'm assuming rarity.
I am too.
Uh,
Yep.
but some of it doesn't make sense because there's different symbols and I think some of them look like the same color. Um, so I'm like, okay, is this like a hero and a villain thing? Is
Deck building
this,
restriction. Yeah, it could be
yeah.
anything at this point.
I do think that there's some, with this information coming out, obviously, again, more questions, but like looking at, for example, like the Hades, the Fabio Hades, with the glowing blonde hair there. Like the top corner, in terms of what we would assume is the cost of the card, again, it doesn't have, some people call it a flourish, like the surrounded golden thing on it. It doesn't have that. It's just the black, sort of like, and then there's the one golden hexagon thing or whatnot. Um, but then I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. Well, we also had the same exact thing on Dragonfire. Uh, I'm like, okay. And then I started looking at Stitch, and on his effect, for the uh, you know, shift mechanic,
Shift. Yep.
it basically says pay this, and I'm like looking at it, I'm like, that looks a lot like the symbol that is on the Dragonfire and on Hades.
So you're
So,
thinking maybe there's two resource systems potentially.
I mean, right now this is kind of up in the air, obviously, as is
Mm.
everything. But on one hand, I'm thinking, okay, so does that mean that these cards are going to be able to function as mana, similar to lands in Magic? I had mentioned before about the symbols at the bottom, and I'm like, okay, well, if you flip the card upside down, okay, well, there's that. Um, Perhaps that signifies it's being used as mana, and of course, the card itself, whatever color it is, represents that color. But the question is, does it apply to all cards, or does it only apply to cards like the ones with the Dragonfire or the Hades? So again, there's so many theories, so many different things out there. I'm really intrigued to find out more. Find another kind of piece to the pattern.
Right now, it's kind of like a roller coaster that never ends. So many twists and turns. Because initially, it was easy to write off Dragonfire, showing a different pattern in the top left. Because okay, well, this is just what the action card frame is going to look like.
Sure,
This is how we
sure.
differentiate, the character cards from the action cards. But now it's like, all right, well, now that bet is off because there's a character card that has this pattern too. So as
Yeah.
I've been joking with Franz, who is my collaborator on Traverse Tavern, like so many times in videos, we just say, "We'll find out in spring," and it's like this is just another one of those. Oh man, so many questions, so many interesting ideas here, but unfortunately, as is with the game,
Yeah,
we'll know for sure in spring, which is
of
getting closer
course.
and closer. I hope it's going to be not long. It will feel like nothing has passed, and we get to spring. We finally get to
I
understand the
mean,
rules.
seriously. I mean, look at this, I mean, here we are, it's January, and it was back in September when we first, started seeing these cards, and we're like, oh man, we gotta wait, and here we are. It's like, 3 or 4 months later. I mean,
Mhm.
time perception, man, I'm telling you.
Yeah, the older you get, the
So
time dilation just keeps on passing faster and
seriously.
faster. Yeah.
I told some people I had a dream about Lorcana at one point. I'm like, they started rolling out the spoilers, and but they went a step further, like, okay, we're gonna send everybody back in time, uh or something like that, so that we can spoil this, and not have to worry about social media, or things like that. So I mean, if anybody's gonna roll back time, it'll be Disney.
They can make the magic happen. Exactly.
Ironically, right after that, probably about like was it a week later or something, they started doing more spoilers. I'm like, oh, cool, nice.
Look at that. Yeah, the first couple of months of Lorcana stuff, you've been there. All of us have been there throughout all of that stuff. It was so funny because Franz and I were talking. This is kind of some inside baseball for Traverse Tavern, but it's like what more videos can we make out of these 7 cards. It was kind of an information drought for a bit, but it seems like things are finally picking up, and there are no regrets with the
Yeah.
channel. I love how it's going so far, and it's been fun speculating because this is, when you think about it, this is the only time in the game's history where we really do have some scarce information to talk about. So that's to put a positive spin on it. That's this will never be seen again, what we're experiencing right now. So
Yeah. Yeah, I sort of joked about this in the past, but I'm just like, because I mentioned, that the Ravensburger Lorcana people are always watching. They like put together some of these cards, but then they didn't have any of the rules text. So like just going off of our speculation, like, okay, yeah, let's do that. I think that's a good win condition. Let's stick with that.
we're turning this into an Orwellian novel here. People at Ravensburger. I love it. Excellent. Well, I think that sounds like a great conversation. I think we'll be looking to wrap up here. One thing that I kind of constructed real quick before this interview is just kind of a series of rapid fire questions, just to kind of have you a fun way to tie up this discussion. So when it comes to these questions, answer what you would prefer to be done with a game, not what you think will actually happen, because that's always fun with the personal
Sure.
preference side of things. But let's get started here. Do you want inks to be in deck or out of deck?
Oh man, I'd prefer for them, honestly, to probably be, I mean, out of the deck. As long as it's a consistent thing of like, for example, I play, One Piece, and I've played other games where you have that mana resource generating every turn. Uh, if you don't have to mess with it, I'm like that just feels good. Like you're not gonna be like out of resources. I wouldn't be
Hmm.
opposed to it being in the deck though, because as long as it is like any card can be mana. But I will say this, if you have the mana source outside the deck and you never have to worry about like all this other stuff, it just feels so much better, honestly.
And it helps higher
That
cost
that's what I
cards
prefer.
be feasible as well. Yeah, I
Sure,
definitely agree
sure.
with that. What is your favorite card or even art? Because we've gotten some new arts revealed thus far.
Yeah. So favorite card in terms of just straight up, like what I've seen is Maleficent, just because I love cards that, destroy
The
things,
card's a 2 for 1. You get the
Um,
card and the vanish effect.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean that's a big part of it. In terms of art, so far, I mean, I I don't think I'm gonna like the card, but I really like the design of Aladdin.
Hmm.
I think like the art on him looks really sweet. He kind of reminds me, and I'll have to delve into this a little bit further. But I want to, I'm not sure if it was Aladdin's father in the Prince of Thieves or whatever movie, or King of Thieves. Um, father, from what I remember.
Hmm.
But I'll have to look into that a little bit more. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. I would love to use more Stitch. I don't know how I feel about the what we've seen with the Stitch so far. Like that's
It's
not my
covering an
play style.
aggro type of thing. Yeah, I see what you mean. All right. Do you plan to do any Lorcana content creation in the future?
So, I mean, in a roundabout way, yes. It really does come down to sort of like balancing things out and figuring things out with life.
Hmm.
Seeing as, I do have a full-time job, I have a family, kiddo, and all this other stuff too. But yeah, I mean, I do want to, look into getting, stuff out there. I'm actually going to be doing once I'm finally fully approved. I'm in the process of review. Like doing some coaching, for the game when it comes out. So if people have questions or things, that's something I want to do. And even though that's not necessarily direct content, it's something that can help people. And that even includes too of like, hey, not just the card game stuff, but like, hey, like maybe they have anxiety about playing, or maybe they, in case you weren't aware, I've been in the mental health field for like 15 years, so like I'm a therapist, on top of that. So I know all about psychology, and that definitely helps in the card game aspect of things. So,
Yeah, I'm sure
um,
that definitely has
but
some
yeah,
good application to, card game coaching as
oh,
well,
definitely,
to have that methodical way
definitely,
of, yeah, answering people's needs in that way.
definitely.
It's awesome. Do you plan to attend Gen Con or any other conventions as they become revealed for the game?
I would love to. The biggest thing is, honestly, just sort of spending time away from my family.
I totally get it.
It would be one thing, but like I have a kiddo, and like I can't imagine spending more than even like a day away from him.
Mhm.
But I would definitely be open to exploring it. I'm definitely going to travel for events, things like that. Hopefully they get some solid sort of like places to travel. So I'm not like, for example, right now, like One Piece and Digimon and all this other stuff. So like, oh yeah, if you want to play in this event, you got to travel to Canada, or you have to travel to Florida or California. When I was playing these other games, it's like, oh hey, look, I have to travel to Pittsburgh or Ohio. I'm like, and I live in Pennsylvania, so it's like it's manageable.
That works better.
But if you're driving more, yeah.
This is
Um,
like this,
yeah,
at
I'll
this time
definitely
it's like either west
play.
or east coast. Yeah.
Right. And it's far. That's just a little bit. But yeah, I'll definitely be traveling to events. I would love to be able to go to something like Gen Con. In order to make that work, I'd probably have to find some other Lorcana people. Let's get a room or something like that. And you know, you know,
It's
but
good to consolidate on costs
yeah, I
that
don't know.
way for sure. Well,
Yeah,
perfect. Well,
yeah. I'm a very very efficient, frugal person, unfortunately or fortunately. So
love it. Well, of course, the Lorcana community would love to see you there, but we understand life priorities, and it seems like you have your priorities in a good place as well. So, out of the three starter decks, which are you looking forward to the most, just based on design?
So if I were to simply go off of my past experience, I'd probably go with the was it the Moana Mickey, just based off the color scheme. Again, I'm hopeful that those colors will do similar things to every other game that does things with those colors.
Yep.
Um, because I mean, again, like they said in one of the interviews, like they're not looking to reinvent the wheel when it
Hmm.
comes to this stuff. There's going to be, and I mean, they haven't said anything specifically, but I mean, I know some of the people that play tested the game, and they said that there's some familiarity to it. So it's like, okay, I don't know what that means, but so more speculation. Um, but yeah, I mean, if it was based off of that and it was based off of like the colors, like, okay, I want to be able to, keep my health up and remove cards, I'm all for it. If it was just based on like the cards themselves, I would be like, I would love to have like the Aladdin Mickey combo or something like that. But I don't know. I'm so confused as to why they did some of these pairings, like like Cruella de Vil and Aladdin.
I keep on telling Franz that if not for the fact that we saw the proper sourcing for Ravensburger, I would have thought that image was fake if it was shown in like some sort of leak. It's like this does
Oh
not
yeah,
seem like real life right now.
yeah.
Aurora and Simba being paired together. It's so funny to me. Um, Perfect. All right, so
Yeah.
this one's a bit of a spicy question coming up because there's been some conversation about Lorcana and what it comes to a potential rotation or ban when the time comes, or would you prefer both?
Well, I think it's really going to come down to um, how the game, like works.
Hmm.
I want to keep this sort of like a family friendly game. I believe they're going to do any sort of banning. Because like that's sort of one of those things that for a kid coming into this, I feel like is going to feel bad knowing
Yeah.
they have their favorite card and they can't play that card.
Or if they open it
And
in a
if they're
pack
not
with
informed,
their allowance money, and it's like, okay, well, you pulled this
right,
card, but you
right,
can't. Yeah,
right.
it's tough.
And that's another thing too, like if you're thinking about this from a designer's perspective, like that's stuff that they're going to be thinking about too, because they want to make sure that this is, the most enjoyable experience for most people.
Hmm.
Um, and if their audience is again, families and kids and stuff like that, then definitely. I think at some point I could see them doing rotation. It just kind of depends on, like how the game progresses, and if there are some really ridiculous, silly combos. And they've already said there's going to be combos, so.
Yeah, thankfully.
um, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I know like, and there's a whole video of me saying this for Kaijudo. Like, I'm really I'm reluctant with rotation just because it can create some of the same experience, because they told me I think they did this on purpose. Like when I was at, Wizards of the Coast, they had told us there was going to be rotation. And I'm like, does that mean I only get to use Kalima for so much longer?
No more
I'm
Andromeda.
like, okay, so basically I had this existential, crisis of sorts. I'm like, I but I'm the mark of Kalima. Like I can't, I, I literally it's like this is like my identity in this game, and I'm like I can't. Eventually, I'm gonna have to stop playing this card, and I'm gonna have to figure out like what I want to associate myself with.
Well, fortunately for
Um,
you, the reason that you had to stop playing Kalima wasn't because of rotation, but was because of the game's cancellation.
I know. Man.
Too soon?
Yeah. Well, dude, it's been years, man. It's been almost a decade. We're good.
Awesome.
Um,
Excellent. So the next card, this is my not the card, but my next question. This is my favorite one of the bunch. Would you prefer a good card that is unhealthy for the game, or a bad card that is healthy for the game?
ooh.
This is tough.
So, I mean, I'd be honest with you. I mean, I really like good cards. But I also understand too, I don't like toxic cards,
Mm.
Like I've played so many different games and so many card things, and there's a lot of times there's one card that can be like really, really brutal. And again, like those are the situations that lead to people deciding about banning. And on top of that, again, they want this to be a family-friendly game. They don't want to make the experience a negative one, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Obviously there's going to be powerful cards. But I would like to think that there's not going to be like ridiculously powerful cards, beyond this point. At this point, I don't think that the ink cost is ever going to go above 10. But that's obviously open for, in the future here. And I think maybe, again, there'll be a restriction on how much, ink you can have. Um, but yeah, I think I'd rather go the other way. That a bad card that's good for the game, you said?
Or a bad card that is healthy for the game, whatever
Healthy.
that
Okay.
means to you.
Okay. Well, if it's bad, I mean, look, like, okay, so let's talk about like a Jukuba or whatever. Like, I think, at first glance, or Olaf, I'm like, okay, I'm like, those are bad cards. But those are also good for the game too, because just like, Ryan Miller had described in his, talking about like making cards,
Mhm.
you have to make some bad cards. You just have to make some vanilla cards from time to time. To be fair, again, I'm not directly saying they're bad. But to me, a card that doesn't have an effect, I'm just kind of like, eh,
Mhm.
like I want to see things. I want things to do things. I want it to be fun. I want it to be exciting.
This is where we're really hoping on
And
draft, right? And that would be a draft playable card, ostensibly.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. That's a big thing of it, because I look at it, I'm like, oh yeah, there's some. like relevance to this if it was in a sealed environment. It's a big body for a 5 cost. When you compare it to things like, Mickey, it was like a 5/5 and costs, 3 more.
That card's
Um,
efficient.
yeah, yeah, efficient for that body. Yeah, I'd probably lean more towards that because again, I unhealthy cards, although, they can be fun initially, it can also turn people away from the game. And I really don't think that's what they want to do.
For additional reading for those listening in the early 2000s, Mark Rosewater of Wizards of the Coast R&D put out this entire article called "When Cards Go Bad," and it kind of goes into detail about why a card game company would eventually, at some point, have to print cards that are nearly unplayable. So that's great supplemental reading for those who are interested. All right, and so this is the last question where I basically, open the floor to you. Is there anything that I haven't asked you or we haven't gone into that, you really want to talk about or would have expected for me to talk about throughout this time?
Yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, I mean, and not specifically, but I don't know. I'm definitely really excited for this game. I think, it's really going to come down to, like honestly what the win condition is, and again, if it's, I mean, I'm hopeful, but if it's fun,
Mhm.
because I I've invested so much hype into this already. I'm just like, okay, well, I'm in it anyway. So, at this point, but yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, we kind of got a little bit of a preview into, with Mulan and Hades, and like, okay, well, I feel like these are supposed to be sort of those general type of things. Like, you want to top end the deck, or sort of make that part of the win condition strategy. And again, it's interesting because it's like, okay, they're talking about gaining that, as I call it, lore, or whatever that symbol is. And they talk about, like, I don't know, like in these boxes, there's all these tokens and stuff. Like, okay, well, are those tokens, are those lore symbols? Or are they like additional power symbols? Because again, you have cards like Hook. He's like, oh yeah, add +2 to him when he challenges. So that would make sense. Let me use some of these. You know, I don't know. I mean, I I want to see more. Obviously, I know everybody does, but like I want to see more than the effects that they've provided even with those cards. Because although those cards, can provide, you know, sort of like this possible win condition, it just doesn't feel as impactful to me. Like, I love long grindy games, and like, oh, I'm just gonna play these, and then I just kind of just auto win, you know. But yeah, I don't know. I just want to see more of this stuff and continue the speculation. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I could probably think of more things, but
No worries. That's a perfect way to, kind of wrap this up here. And of course, for the people listening, can you tell us where to, find more of you? Social links, maybe that Metafy link
yeah.
as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you could do me the solid of putting it into the info,
I
but
definitely will.
basically anything, if you type in Raijinku, Raijinku, I know it's a mouthful, but if you type that in to Twitter, Instagram, obviously YouTube, I have all these things there. If you ever come across somebody named Raijinku in a game, it's most likely me. So. Yeah, like I said, once I get the whole approval process for Metafy, I will be available to start providing lessons for card games and or life. I mean, if you're struggling with game anxiety or, things like that, those are areas that I can work with you on. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, that's what I'd say. Check that out. I definitely plan to, get myself out there a little bit more. Maybe do like a regular sort of check in on the YouTubes and stuff. So
Excellent. I feel like that's a great way to go full circle with this video, but we can end with what is a Raijinku? Same thing with
Okay, okay.
Kaijudo.
It's like, what's a Kaijudo? What's a Raijin? So so essentially it just basically started from I've been big into like mythology and then like video games and all these other stuff like that. There's a few different references to like Raijin, who, depending on how you look at it, could be the god of thunder or lightning, or it literally means like love or something too. That's not what I was going for. Uh, but in some video games I played, there was like characters named Raijin. Like Final Fantasy was a big one. There was like Raijin and Fujin, and then another game for PlayStation that I totally recommend if you've never played it. It's called Xenogears. Um, there is one of the main characters. They have like a different sequence of combos you can put in, and one of those attacks was this. So I wanted to make it my own while still like I thought it was cool. So let me just add a KU to make this cool, like seriously, that was not the intention to make it sound like it was cool. But I was just like, it sounds Japanese. I like Japanese. Let's make it work.
And it does fit
So
within, I've been studying a little bit of Japanese. It does fit within the Japanese phonetic structure. So, in my book,
yeah,
you
yeah,
succeeded in that. Yeah. Excellent. Well,
yeah,
I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on to the show. We had a great conversation, covered a lot of ground today, remembering Kaijudo's legacy, as well as looking forward to uh, seeing what's happening on with Lorcana. So thank you very much for being here, and the floor is yours if you want any last comments.
yeah, yeah. Of course, I appreciate you having me on here. It's been a lot of fun. I love talking about card games. I could literally
Likewise.
pull a Captain America and do this all night. But but yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. I'm really excited to see what the game has in store, and of course, I love all the people speculating and the content creators getting in on this, and I even if I'm not right with certain things, or in terms of guessing, I like to get the wheels turning. Like
Mm.
I'm like, oh, what if, and it could be complete red herring, or it could be a complete thing. It's just like, no, but think, what if,
It's really about the
like,
journey, not the destination when it comes to this stuff.
yeah. Yeah, because at one point I had talked about like, oh yeah, like, what if those little pips, the lore things, those get put randomly from your deck, like your cards get put randomly from your deck under like a location or something, or a certain card, and at the end, when you've defeated that location or that card, you total up all the pips or the lores that you got, and like, oh, well, that's how you win. Obviously, it's a little bit different now, but. I don't know. I'm excited. Definitely, open to coming on like these types of shows and events and podcasts with people.
That's
I
right,
might
content
make it a
creators,
point.
listen up. Get Raijin
Yeah,
Ku
yeah,
on other
seriously.
shows. Excellent.
Yeah, seriously. But yeah, I don't know. Seriously, there could be so much more we could talk about, but I know we need to wrap this up. So, as I would always say at the end of my videos, on my YouTube channel, I basically just say, keep calm and game on. So,
Keep calm and game on, and we'll see you again at the
yeah.
Travers Tavern. Take care, everyone.